All right, so even I, who am giving these transmissions as Mukti Anandama, am expanding the reign or the time, if you will, of where she is allowed to freely express, right? Where the limited identity gives up its reign, which is for the limited identity, that's not easy to do because the identity that the limited identity is living in is believed to be the identity important, for being safe and getting everything she needs and all that. So one of the key things that I really got out of being Mukti Anandama and sharing this eternal wisdom for me and my mission, I don't really like to use the word mission because the connotations in the limited world are very limited, the way we think of mission. So as Mukti Anandama, I like to say the adventure that I have signed up for um, is really about facilitating originality in awakened beings and helping them create the space within themselves to allow this original expression, their original eternal expression to come forth. In other words, I do not need, I am not here as Mukti Anandama to give people a path. I am here to facilitate the pathless path, to remove the barriers and the blocks and the chains that are keeping their particular eternal identity from being able to express, to move in the world, to know thyself.
That's what I was going to say. And I think you're articulating a great point. Knowing thyself is so critical because I feel like the desires of the heart and addictions, there's a vast difference between the limited desires and the unlimited being's desires. So if you didn't have limitation, who would you be? What would you do? And I think that's kind of one of the tipping points and kind of certainly the wall we push up against as a limited person, um, because of the limitation. So they're entirely two different beings.
Right, we're not really a limited person. You're choosing to focus your attention on being a limited
Right.
being. Of the limited identity, once you awaken, so that you can observe the limited identity. In other words, you've awakened to the point where you realize you are more than your current personality, you're more than your body, you're more than in everything you experience. And you might not even know what that more is. That's the journey post-enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
is exploring you beyond the limited identity.
Right.
So when you come from that understanding, it's easier to not be identified with the desires of the limited identity. You can see where they're coming from
Right.
because you're now outside of the limited identity.
Right.
You're not the limited identity needing this thing because it's going to make them safe in some way
Right.
or real in some way.
Right. Well, and I think this ties into fear, self-preservation, separation, and loss, like
Yeah.
all these illusions. A thing that I'll tie it into that popular culture people are aware of is a lot of these superhero movies that everybody's obsessed with, these stories, because in a sense, the human spirit is made visible because it's not worried about self-preservation when it becomes unlimited. Like, for example, that movie, The Matrix, grabbing a helicopter from falling, like doing things that would be considered impossible by the limited self. But the eternal self is able to overcome the self-preservation
Yeah,
fear.
one can really only do these sort of what we consider miraculous or impossible things when one has, in that moment, no doubt that one can do them. Like if one tries to do things like that from the limited self, be a healer or whatever miraculous thing, it won't work because it's coming from the limited identity. And that's the frustration of many, because inwardly their eternal knowing is knowing that they are capable of doing these things that look impossible to the limited identity. But if you're still kind of entwined with the limited identity and you're trying from that perspective to do these things, the miracles won't occur. Then you might end up hurting yourself. So yeah, there's a balance. But I think one thing that I really wanted to draw out is there are so many now, like this million that they speak of, and more that are near that point of recognizing this can be my last life in the world of death, coming in through the world of death way, through a mother and a father and being born into the world. That doesn't mean this is the last time you'll participate in the world of death adventure, but they recognize that all of their lifetimes have come to this to end the need to do the embodiment through a birth and then to do the exit through death, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're complete. It's not like you're escaping. It's just, I am complete. I don't need to do this again. And there's just a knowing. There's a knowing. And so, beyond the million and the million, the thing is, there's many of us, and I've done the same as a limited identity, who are looking for the way to accomplish this thing. And I would say that there are, of course, markers, there's notes that every person who manifests their eternal embodiment in the world of death will need to ring. There's bells that will need to be rung. The bells are the same. But how those get noticed from the individual and how they're rung is unique. And that's probably there is spontaneity in every path, no matter what level of enlightenment. It's just when you get to this level, the balance of spontaneity is almost 100%. There's no teacher, no guide, it's just you.
Mm.
You, and you recognizing that it's always been you.
Right.
You must be 100% empowered as you in eternal identity. So what happens is you get this knowing, this is my last life. Then you're going out into the world and looking for a teacher or a way or a path that will bring you what you're looking for. And I think you can spend much of your life doing that and not get to the point of realizing you are the path. It will be decided, selected, and unfolded through your unique prism of eternity.
Right, that's great.
Not
And
prison,
prism. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand. I was going to say, maybe you can illuminate some of the minutia of this process where there's an inertia, and as you were saying, the focus brings you there, but there's also the balance of know thyself, this identity shifting as like two aspects. So is there a tipping point where that focus, that consistent habitual focus, and then the knowing thyself, the awakening, where I guess it becomes habitual? Are there, because I know traditional enlightenment, like you awaken to who you
It's
are
just
and
like
you're.
learning to ride a bike. I mean, in the
Mhm.
beginning, it's You know, you got to really focus, put my foot on the pedal, you know, all the
Mm.
different things. If you ever learn to ride a bike, it's not like you get on the bike and you start going. So that's like it. The more you focus and you're eventually it just takes over and becomes natural, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, myself being Mukti Anandama is so is very different than the limited identity, as it should be, because it's well, first of all, when you step into the limited identity has a lifespan, a personality, the identity of my form or identification, that has a limited lifespan, because encoded in that identity is the codes of death.
Mm.
So the eternal identity does not have a lifespan. It's not just here to do this. Like the eternal identity, you can never completely know. It's not the act of, I know it and now I'm good. And it's the act of eternally getting to know yourself.
Mm.
That's what's going on. There's no end point. And maybe that's really what you're wanting to draw forth, is there is no end. There's no time where you can just be like, I'm done knowing myself.
Right.
it's always it's always going to be an adventure. The difference is the more expansive your awakening is, your consciousness is turned on, the more you know who you are as a creator, eternal being, the more choice you have to direct the movie. It's not on automatic pilot anymore. And so the joy is in experiencing being dirty to getting clean. You can think of it that way, but I don't want to give it a negative connotation. But, you know, putting on all this makeup and costumes and then everything that you've done to like taking it all off, washing yourself and just, now I can just be me until I'm ready to put on another costume.
Right.
You know? And from this point, I think most of us that, I don't know if I can say all, because anything is possible, but I think from this standpoint, if you've reached this level of awareness in the world of death, probably not going to put on the costume of a mortal body again. Because there's a lot, you know, if you're here in a world of limited death and you've realized this, first of all, you've signed up to be in the world of death. So that means you wanted that experience and the, you know, the fullness of getting that experience. If you've awakened to this, that means you've awakened to not to being done. In other words, you would not program yourself to awaken to this level of understanding that this is my last life unless it actually is going to be your last life. Like that, like for me, that was not a thought that somebody instilled in me. It was a knowing that was revealed to me whenever that was, in my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but prior to that, did I have the knowing? No, because I needed the experiences around death that I had to complete the adventure.
Mm.
But when it comes, and if you have it, then that's the opportunity. It's an opportunity. If it resonates, if it's, you know, if you want it, if you believe it to be possible, then this is your time for that. Otherwise, you would reject it, or it wouldn't even be in your fields. You would not be listening to somebody like me.
Right. Thank you.